When Christopher Lloyd first read the Back to the Future script, he hated it. At 86, he's finally revealing why and how a last-minute meeting changed everything. From replacing the original Marty McFly after weeks of filming to pushing the limits of 1980s special effects, Lloyd shares the risky decisions that could have ruined the trilogy. Now, he's sharing what really happened on set, including the real reason why Doc Brown's famous catchphrase almost never made it to screen. Christopher Lloyd was born on October 22, 1938, in Stamford, Connecticut. He was the youngest of 7 children in a rich and well-connected family. His mom, Ruth, was a talented singer and the sister of Roger Lapham, who later became the mayor of San Francisco. His dad, Samuel, was a successful lawyer. The family lived a comfortable life, partly thanks to Lloyd's maternal grandfather, Lewis Henry Lapham, who helped start Texaco, the big oil company. This made the family even wealthier. Lloyd grew up in Westport, Connecticut, which was changing from a small farming town to a creative suburb filled with artists from New York City. This unique environment helped shape his love for creativity. At home, his parents loved theater and the arts, and they passed that passion on to him. Interestingly, his family's history went back to the Mayflower, as one of his ancestors, John Howland, had been on the famous ship and signed the Mayflower Compact. Lloyd's love for acting began when he was just 14. In the summer of 1952, he got an apprenticeship at theaters in Hyannis, Massachusetts, and Mount Kisco, New York. This wasn't just a fun summer job. He worked hard, helping with sets, costumes, and managing the stage. He often worked 16-hour days for little or no money. But he loved every moment. One big highlight was when he played the stage manager in our town. He was only 15, but he nailed the challenging role, impressing both the audience and his castmates. This made him even more determined to become an actor. At 19, in 1957, Lloyd took a bold step. He moved to New York City to study acting at the neighborhood Playhouse School of the Theater. There, he trained with Sanford Meisner, a famous acting teacher known for his intense methods. Meisner taught actors how to live truthfully in imaginary situations. Lloyd worked incredibly hard, spending over 12 hours a day in classes and rehearsals. During one exercise called the repetition drill, Lloyd had a breakthrough moment. For 2 hours, he repeated a simple phrase with his partner, and by the end, he felt a deep emotional connection. This moment changed how he saw acting forever. After his studies, Lloyd spent over 10 years acting in small theater productions. He didn't make much money and had to take odd jobs like driving a taxi to get by. In 1961, he had his first big stage role in And They Put Handcuffs on the Flowers, a bold and experimental play. For his part, he had to hang upside down and deliver a monologue. A tough task, but he gave it his all. Then, in 1969, he made his Broadway debut in Red, White, and Maddox, a political satire about segregationist Governor Lester Maddox. Lloyd played several roles, including Maddox himself, and critics praised his ability to transform into different characters. Although the play didn't last long, it helped put Lloyd on the map as a serious actor. Christopher Lloyd's big break came when he acted in the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975. He played Tabor, a character in a story about mental health and life inside an institution. The film won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and was a huge success. Lloyd was 37 years old at the time, which is considered late for a first film role. But he stood out with his ability to bring depth to complex characters, which would define his career. After this, he easily moved into other film and TV roles, quickly becoming known for his quirky yet emotional acting style. In 1978, Lloyd became unforgettable as Reverend Jim Ignatowski in the TV show Taxi. This sitcom, which ran until 1983, focused on a group of New York City taxi drivers. Reverend Jim was a former hippie whose life had taken a chaotic turn, and Lloyd brought the perfect mix of humor and odd charm to the role. His bizarre behavior and hilarious lines made him a fan favorite. The character's catchphrase, "What does that mean?" became iconic. For this role, Lloyd won 2 Emmy Awards for Outstanding Supporting Actor in 1982 and 1983. Taxi itself was a hit, mixing comedy with deeper social issues and winning multiple awards. Reverend Jim had some of the best storylines, including a hilarious episode where he tried to pass the taxi driver's test, which is still remembered by fans today. By the 1980s, Lloyd was taking on even bigger roles. In 1984, he joined the Star Trek franchise, playing the villainous Klingon Commander Krug in Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. His performance added intensity and a sense of danger to the story, and fans loved his menacing portrayal. Then, in 1985, he appeared in the comedy mystery Clue as Professor Plum. The film didn't do well at first, but over time it became a cult favorite, thanks to its smart humor, multiple endings, and a brilliant cast. Lloyd fit perfectly in the ensemble, showing his knack for both comedy and drama. That same year, Lloyd landed the role that would make him a legend, Dr. Emmett "Doc" Brown in Back to the Future. What's shocking is that Lloyd almost turned down the role of Doc Brown. When he first read the script, he didn't like it. He wasn't sure he could play such a strange character and threw the script away. But then, after thinking more about it, he agreed to meet with the director, Robert Zemeckis. That meeting changed everything. Zemeckis explained his vision, and Lloyd decided to give it a chance. What started as hesitation became one of the most famous roles of his career. The search for Doc Brown wasn't simple. Many people were considered before Lloyd. Some, like musicians such as Mark Mothersbaugh, were asked because they had a lot of energy, but they didn't have the acting skills the role needed. Big actors like Jeff Goldblum and John Lithgow were also options, but weren't picked. Lloyd, who had a background in theater and TV shows like Taxi, seemed perfect for the part because he could play odd characters so well. At first, Lloyd wasn't sure about the role, but once he accepted it, he gave it everything. He made Doc Brown funny, but also caring. Doc wasn't just a crazy scientist. He became a mentor to Marty McFly, which made people love him even more. Lloyd's performance brought humor, energy, and even some seriousness to the character. It helped make Back to the Future a huge hit, earning over $380 million worldwide and becoming one of the most popular movies ever. Lloyd's chemistry with Michael J. Fox made the movie even better, but it almost didn't happen. At first, Eric Stoltz was cast as Marty McFly. Stoltz was a good actor, but his serious style didn't match the fun tone of the movie. After weeks of filming, the directors made a hard decision to replace him with Fox. This change was expensive and stressful because they had to reshoot many scenes. Lloyd had already acted in scenes with Stoltz and was worried about redoing everything. But once Fox joined, the energy on set changed. Fox's charm and humor matched Lloyd's wild Doc Brown perfectly. Their back and forth felt natural, like a father and son, and audiences loved it. Fox's schedule made filming even harder. He was still starring in the TV show Family Ties, so he had to work on both projects at the same time. This meant filming Back to the Future at night after his TV work. The cast and crew worked long hours to make it all fit, but it was worth it. The chemistry between Lloyd and Fox brought so much life to the movie that it became a defining part of their careers. Lloyd thought a lot about how to play Doc Brown. He didn't want him to just be silly. He wanted people to see the caring mentor beneath the crazy hair and wild gestures. He added his own touches, like the way Doc talks and moves. His delivery of lines like "Great Scott" made them unforgettable. Lloyd also showed that Doc cared deeply about Marty and the dangers of time travel, giving the character more depth. The movie wasn't easy to make. Replacing Stoltz cost the production millions and delayed filming. Special effects also took a lot of work. The scene where the DeLorean leaves fiery tracks when it hits 88 miles per hour is now iconic, but it required a lot of effort from the effects team. The schedule was tight, and the crew worked almost non-stop to meet deadlines. Despite all these challenges, the movie came together, filming Back to the Future. Part 2 and Part 3 at the same time was a bold idea. Director Robert Zemeckis and producer Bob Gale started this project in early 1989. They didn't just do it to save time or money. They wanted the story and characters to stay consistent across both movies. Filming lasted almost an entire year, from February to December, and it took a lot of planning and effort to keep everything organized. Shooting both films back-to-back had its advantages. They reused sets, costumes, and even the special effects equipment, which was important because the films needed advanced visuals. For example, they used motion control photography, a new technique at the time to make characters played by the same actor, like Michael J. Fox, as both Marty McFly and his future son appear on screen together. The timing and staging for scenes like that had to be absolutely perfect. But it wasn't just about technical tricks. They had to tell a story that made sense across both movies. Fans loved the first Back to the Future, so the sequels needed to live up to their expectations. They balanced fun moments and humor with bigger ideas, like how our choices affect the future. The two movies also had very different settings: 2015 in Part 2 and the Wild West in Part 3. This meant building detailed sets and creating costumes that matched each time period. Even though it was hard work, their risk paid off. Part 2 made over $331 million, and Part 3 earned $244 million. Together, the movies kept the story smooth and connected, and they proved that this way of filming could work. Other franchises later tried the same approach because it worked so well here. The production wasn't easy. They pushed the limits of what filmmaking technology could do at the time. The team at Industrial Light and Magic created new effects for the time travel scenes, using a system called Vista Glide that made everything look seamless. The story also got more complicated with alternate timelines and deeper themes. Making sure it all stayed engaging while still being fun was a challenge. But they succeeded. The characters also changed and grew in the sequels. Michael J. Fox kept Marty McFly the same lovable and relatable guy, but you could see how his adventures were making him more mature. Christopher Lloyd's Doc Brown became more thoughtful and cautious in Part 2, but in Part 3, we saw a new side of him. He fell in love with Clara Clayton, which made him feel more human and less focused on just science. Filming wasn't smooth either. Outdoor scenes were shot in California, and the weather kept changing, which made things tough. Still, the cast and crew worked hard to make sure everything stayed on schedule. Christopher Lloyd's performance as Doc Brown is unforgettable. In the first movie, he's all about his wild ideas and excitement for time travel. But as the trilogy goes on, we see more layers to him. In Part 2, he wrestles with tough decisions about how much they should mess with time. Then, in Part 3, we see him embrace life in a new way by falling in love. Lloyd's energy and emotion made Doc Brown more than just a quirky scientist. He became a character people connected with deeply. The Back to the Future trilogy is still a classic. It's funny, exciting, and full of heart, which is why people love it even today. It also changed how people think about time travel stories, introducing ideas like alternate timelines that are now common in movies and shows. Characters like Doc Brown inspired future stories, and phrases like "Great Scott" became part of pop culture. The trilogy's influence goes beyond just the movies. The DeLorean became one of the most famous cars ever. Fans even celebrate Back to the Future Day every October 21st, the day Marty traveled to 2015. People still watch these movies, talk about their themes, and enjoy the clever storytelling. They've truly stood the test of time, just like the time machine itself. Christopher Lloyd became a big deal after the Back to the Future trilogy. These movies ran from 1985 to 1990, and people loved him as Doc Brown. After that, he showed how good he was at playing very different kinds of characters. In 1988, he played Judge Doom in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This was a big movie because it mixed live action with animation in a way no one had ever done before. It made over $300 million worldwide and won 4 Oscars. Judge Doom was scary and weird. Lloyd used big dramatic movements and wild expressions to make the character unforgettable. One scene, where Doom shrinks a cartoon character, is still famous because it's creepy but also funny. Lloyd even changed his voice to sound cartoon-like, making Doom feel even more strange. This role proved that Lloyd wasn't just a regular actor, he could do something totally unique. Then, in 1991, Lloyd played Uncle Fester in The Addams Family. He brought the character to life in a way that made people laugh and care about him at the same time. Fester was odd but lovable, and Lloyd made him more than just a goofy guy. He made him feel real. The movie was a hit, and its sequel, Addams Family Values, 1993, was also a big success. Together, the movies made over $200 million. Fester became one of the most loved characters in the series because of how Lloyd played him. People still talk about it today, and Lloyd meets fans at conventions who remember these roles fondly. Lloyd also did a lot of voice acting. In 1997, he voiced Rasputin in the animated movie Anastasia. This movie made $140 million and was both a critical and commercial success. Lloyd made Rasputin feel evil, but also sad, like a villain with a tragic side. His voice acting made the character come alive. He also played Hacker in Cyber Chase, an educational kids show that started in 2002. Kids loved the way Lloyd made Hacker funny and exciting, while teaching math at the same time. This role even got him Emmy nominations, showing how much people liked his work. He didn't stop there. He also voiced characters in games, like playing Doc Brown again in Back to the Future video games. His voice acting showed that he could make a character feel real even when you couldn't see him. In the 1990s and 2000s, Lloyd stayed busy. He played Switchblade Sam in Dennis the Menace, 1993, a goofy but chaotic character that made people laugh. This movie made $117 million, showing that Lloyd could still connect with family audiences. His earlier role as Reverend Jim Ignatowski in Taxi won him 2 Emmys, and he kept showing up in TV shows like Fringe. In 1999, he even played himself in Man on the Moon, a movie about Andy Kaufman. This showed how much respect he had in Hollywood. Meanwhile, Christopher Lloyd's first marriage was with Catherine Dallas Dixon Boyd. They got married on June 6, 1959, when Lloyd was just 21 years old. Both were young and dreaming of becoming famous actors. Their marriage lasted 12 years through the 1960s, a time of big social and cultural changes. During those years, Lloyd struggled to find success. He took small theater roles and occasional TV appearances, trying to build his career. Their marriage ended in 1971. But the story didn't stop there. 31 years later, in 2002, Catherine sued Lloyd for $1.2 million. She claimed he hadn't paid her alimony for over 3 decades. Their divorce agreement had stated that Lloyd needed to pay her $1,500 per month until she remarried or died. Since she hadn't remarried, Catherine said he still owed her all that money, plus interest. By this time, Lloyd was famous for roles in Back to the Future and Taxi, and the lawsuit brought a lot of attention to his personal life. Lloyd's second marriage was with actress Kay Tornborg. They got married in 1974 and stayed together for 13 years, until 1987. This marriage happened at a key time in Lloyd's career. Just a year after they got married, he landed his first big film role in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest in 1975. Kay was there as he worked on this movie, which went on to win 5 Oscars. Even though Kay was an actress, she and Lloyd never acted together in any major projects. This was unusual because many Hollywood couples worked together at the time. It seemed like they kept their personal and professional lives separate. Their marriage ended in 1987, just as Lloyd's fame hit its peak. That same year, Back to the Future 2 started production. Lloyd's third marriage was to Carol Ann Vanek in 1988. This marriage was much shorter, lasting only 3 years until 1991. By this time, Lloyd was 50 years old and one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Very little is known about Carol Ann Vanek. Unlike Lloyd's other wives, she stayed out of the spotlight, and there's almost no public information about her. Their short marriage raises questions about the challenges of maintaining relationships when living under the pressures of fame. Lloyd's fourth marriage was with screenwriter Jane Walker Wood. They got married in 1992 and stayed together for 13 years until 2005. This was Lloyd's longest marriage, and it was different because they worked together professionally. In 1994, Jane wrote for the movie Camp Nowhere, where Lloyd had a starring role. This was one of the few times Lloyd blended his personal and professional lives. Their shared life took a tragic turn in 2008, 3 years after their divorce. A wildfire destroyed their Montecito, California home, which Lloyd had kept after the divorce. The house was worth $11 million and was completely reduced to ashes. Years later, while selling the rebuilt property, Lloyd met Lisa Loyacono, the real estate agent who would later become his 5th wife. This shows how one event in his life led to another. Even after their divorce, Lloyd and Jane remained on good terms. In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, something surprising happened. Lloyd, his wife Lisa, his ex-wife Jane, and Jane's new husband all quarantined together. This unusual arrangement showed how Lloyd and Jane had maintained a friendly relationship despite their separation. Christopher Lloyd's life hasn't always been smooth. He became famous in the 1980s and 1990s with roles like Doc Brown in Back to the Future and Jim Ignatowski in Taxi. But even with all that success, he faced serious money problems. In 2010, he had to file for bankruptcy. The reasons were typical for celebrities. He spent too much, didn't always have steady work, and went through expensive divorces. On top of that, in 2008, his house was destroyed in a fire. He rebuilt it, but when he sold it, he lost money because the economy was bad. Despite all this, Christopher didn't give up. He kept acting in movies and TV, working hard to fix his finances. His story shows how even famous people can struggle, but determination can help them recover. Christopher isn't just an actor, he's also someone who cares about giving back. He created something called the Great Dixter Charitable Trust. It helps protect old gardens and teaches people about gardening. The trust focuses on saving the environment and encouraging biodiversity. It runs on donations and spends over £2 million every year. But Christopher's kindness doesn't stop there. He also helps students by supporting scholarships for nurses and veterinary workers at Iowa Western Community College. He has helped people affected by disasters too, like those hit by Hurricane Katrina and the Indonesian tsunami. Christopher's mom, who passed away in 1984, was also big on helping others, and he learned this from her. Through all of this, he shows that being kind and giving back is just as important as being successful. Christopher's acting career is full of hidden gems that people often forget. In R.L. Stine's The Haunting Hour, 2012, he played a funny but creepy character in an episode called Grampires. In Camp Nowhere, 1994, he played a quirky actor who helps kids set up a fake summer camp. Even though the story was a bit silly, he made it fun with his comedic timing. His very first movie role was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, 1975. He played Max Tabor, a patient in a psychiatric hospital. Jack Nicholson's performance stole the spotlight, but Christopher's role added to the movie's impact. In recent years, he's worked on smaller indie films like The Boat Builder, 2015, where he showed he's not afraid to try new things. These roles prove he's more than just the famous characters we know him for. Some of his lesser-known performances deserve more credit. In 20 Bucks, 1993, he played a character connected to many others in the story. He showed deep emotions without being dramatic, which was impressive. In I Am Not a Serial Killer, 2016, he played a man with a dark secret, and critics loved how he brought the character to life. In Senior Moment, 2021, he played a man learning about second chances, showing his ability to mix humor and heartfelt moments. Christopher even brought his talent to animated movies, like playing Rasputin in Anastasia, 1997. His voice work was full of personality and added a lot to the character. These roles show how versatile he is, even if they're not as well known. Christopher started as a theater actor, and that has always been important to him. He trained at the neighborhood playhouse and performed at Yale Repertory Theater. These early roles earned him awards and respect long before Hollywood noticed him. Even now, he returns to the stage. In 2021, at 82 years old, he played King Lear in a Shakespeare production. Critics thought it was brave of him to take on such a big role at his age. Over the years, he's also acted in plays by Chekhov and Brecht and played Scrooge in A Christmas Carol. Recently, he surprised fans by showing up at rehearsals for the Broadway adaptation of Back to the Future. Theater has always been part of who he is, and it continues to inspire his work. Christopher Lloyd's acting style is unique because it is shaped by his experiences and training. One of the biggest influences on him is Sanford Meisner's approach to acting. Meisner believed in living truthfully under imaginary circumstances, which means reacting honestly in the moment instead of acting in a fake or pre-planned way. Lloyd strongly believes in this idea and feels that making a real emotional connection with other actors is what makes a performance truly powerful. He says, acting is more about reacting to what's happening around you rather than sticking to a rehearsed plan. Lloyd takes his preparation for characters very seriously. He doesn't just memorize lines, he steps into the world of the character. He observes people, uses his own life experiences, and studies personalities that match his role. For example, when he played Reverend Jim in Taxi, he was inspired by the strange and quirky people he had met in real life. This helped him create a character that felt real and relatable to the audience. One of Meisner's main techniques is something called the repetition exercise. In this practice, actors repeat phrases to each other, which helps them focus on their scene partner and react in the moment. Lloyd has talked about how this exercise helps create honest performances. It also taught him to embrace unpredictability, which means being open to whatever happens during a scene instead of sticking rigidly to a script. Another key lesson from Meisner is emotional preparation. Lloyd uses this idea by tapping into his own memories or feelings to bring out the emotions needed for a scene. This approach gives his characters more depth, making them feel genuine and relatable to audiences.